vous battez en retraite, ce sera la ruine et la destruction pour tous les biens que vous possédez. Et l'esclavage et la mort pour vous et tous les vôtres. Mais j'ai confiance en vous. Vous êtes les descendants de ceux qui ont conquis le monde. Vous saurez vous en montrer digne.
Pendant 6 siècles,
Rome had dominated the Western world for 6 centuries. Under the protection of their armies, the Romans had built luxurious towns. All this was made possible by the economic and monetary system based on a silver coin, the Augustan denarius. In the 3rd century, the barbarians arrived. They undermined the foundations of the Roman Empire. A period of crisis began: political, economic, and monetary crisis. The restoration undertaken by Aurelian and his successor Diocletian aimed to reintegrate every aspect of the Roman Empire, particularly the coinage. They created new gold coins that were struck in all the mints, and which gradually replaced silver coins. They served as a scale of value and an instrument of exchange, which spread throughout the Roman Empire.
After the reform of Constantine, the gold coin known as solidus became the currency of the late Roman Empire and the early Middle Ages. In the year 313, Constantine put a stop to the persecution of Christians and issued an Edict of Tolerance, which was an official recognition of Christianity. So Constantine became the first Christian emperor. By being baptized, he left his successors with Christianity as the official religion. The Church was quick to criticize personal enrichment and the use of coins, but encouraged donations and received tons of gold and silver from the emperor and from important dignitaries in the empire. On this mosaic from Ravenna, the emperor and the archbishop are depicted side by side. Christian symbols worked their way into art. Mosaics showed scenes from the Bible. They glorified the good relations between temporal and spiritual power. The chrism, a monogram of the name of Christ, appeared in the year 330 on coins of all metals. It was also found on the soldiers' standards, an allusion to support from the Christian God in battles fought by Constantine and his successors. The revival of gold made it easier to hoard wealth. Big landowners stored the profits from properties in different parts of the empire in gold.
Saint Melanie's husband had an annual income of about 550 kilograms of gold. One day, when we had amassed a vast, countless sum, enough to send around 15 tons of gold to help the poor and the saint, it looked to me as though the house was lit up by the abundance of treasure like a fire.
The empire split into regions. In 330, Constantine founded a new capital in the east, Constantinople, which immediately began to rival Rome. Religious centers sprang up, military headquarters, local mints. From then on, coins were found bearing the names of both cities. The Roman ones represented the she-wolf and the founding twins. The ones from Constantinople showed victory with a foot on the prow of a ship.
In the 4th century, the barbarian raids intensified. To help defend their territory, the Romans regionalized their armies, and to this end, in the middle of the 4th century, the future Emperor Julian moved to Gaul, where he spent his time defending the territory along the Rhine, wintering in Paris. As gold was the dominant currency, the soldiers demanded to be paid in gold. Large quantities of gold coins were struck locally to pay their wages. The most important mints in Gaul were Trèves, Lyon, and Arles.
Silver and bronze coins were struck at all the mints as well. But they only played a marginal role in the economy. The number of gold coins being struck went on increasing throughout the first half of the 4th century, and the money supply swelled in accordance with military needs. After about 360, the supply decreased as falling tax revenues, invasions and loss of territories made it difficult to issue new coins. During the 4th century, there were many mints in all the different parts of the empire. But with each invasion, more of them closed. In the 5th century, the loss of vast territories forced the gold mints to cluster in the immediate vicinity of Constantinople and in Italy. Solidi from Milan, Rome, Antioch and Constantinople were now in circulation.
Je vous conduirai au combat et à la victoire. Aujourd'hui, les Romains. Demain, le monde.
Like the other barbarians, Attila built up a fabulous war chest. His troops ransomed or laid waste cities in the west and then withdrew to Central Europe, where the metal was recast. After Attila's death, the Roman troops from Constantinople launched a counter-offensive and recovered part of the treasure, which was transferred to Rome and used by the Emperor Anthemus to finance the war against the Vandals. The treasure of kings was always changing hands. In the 5th century, the barbarians broke through the Roman frontiers. Gaul was invaded by the Visigoths in the west, the Burgundians in the east, the Franks in the north. They occupied towns, converted monuments, and laid hands on the stocks of gold and silver. They soon imitated Roman ways and opened mints in the large towns. The Roman mint in Lyon closed in 413. There were no more abundant and identifiable series of gold coins until it was reopened by the Burgundians in 507.
The Burgundians, like other barbarian peoples, had a system of coinage modelled on Roman coins and then Byzantine coins. As you can see on the example, we've chosen to illustrate this panel. Luckily for us, you often find at one point in the field on the back of Burgundian coins a sign, a monogram, which is in fact the contraction of all the letters that make up the Burgundian king's name. Only the Burgundians used this type of distinction. The other peoples made do with straightforward imitations of Byzantine coins.
Which is what the Visigoths did with the coins they issued in southwest France and the Iberian Peninsula. The Franks did the same in the north. Their coins have no mint mark, so they're classified according to their engraving style.
Burgundian coinage, like the coinage of the Franks and the Visigoths, was essentially based on the gold coin. Silver coins are much rarer, and so are bronze.
At the instigation of Clovis, the Franks enlarged their territory. They drove the Visigoths into Spain in 507 and then defeated the Burgundians. The baptism of Clovis put a stop to religious quarrels. He then managed to unite the various peoples into one entity, France, and so the first royal family came to power, the Merovingians. About that time, regional monetary types were developing, like the famous boucle perdue or lost ribbon series, characteristic of the coins issued in eastern France. But the territorial unity achieved by Clovis didn't last long. On his death in 511, his 4 sons divided up his kingdom. This first sharing out of lands and wealth was the start of a long tradition. Every king had to be rich, and his temporal power could be gauged by the size of his hoard. So the armies spent their time pillaging, and the kings piling up treasure, which in turn was looted by others. Only the church escaped this pillaging and remained in continuous possession of its lands and wealth. From 575, the Merovingian monetary type became standard, but lost all reference to the sovereign. Georges Depeyrot compared all the known coins, looking for criteria to establish the chronology of when they were issued. He had to take the 19th century collections of drawings of coins, check the inscriptions and the weight, and add the more recent discoveries, a long, painstaking task. All these coins have the same structure. On one side a place name, here Lugdunum, the town of Lyon, and on the reverse side the names of the smiths who struck the coin, here Gyrius and Petrus. But we don't know the period when these mint masters were active, so how can we work out when the coins were issued?
There's a rule in numismatics. We know that the heaviest coins and those with the most gold, in the case of gold coins, are the first coins of each issue. In other words, at the start, the coins are heavy and of good quality. As the years go by, less gold is used and they're lighter. These 3 gold coins look very much alike, and yet if we weigh them and examine them, we can see that this one is much heavier than the other 2. The weight of these coins alone is enough to determine that this coin quite definitely predates the others. If we look at the 2 others that are the same weight, one is much yellower than the other, and it's not the same alloy. These technical, mathematical and metrological criteria must of course be set against all the other criteria, like die links and stylistic development, like the names of mint masters that might be found. And then we can actually reconstitute the quantities produced and compare the figures we have, the pure numismatic data, with other historical elements, and see to what extent numismatics can enlighten us and give us new information about the period.
The conclusions of the study show that the Merovingian money supply increased throughout the 5th century until the reign of Clotaire and then Dagobert. Their victories, their alliances, and the strength of their armies made them rich kings. After them, from 640 on, the situation deteriorated. The coins of Clotaire and Dagobert are the most spectacular of the Merovingian coins. They reintroduced the bust of the king.
Moi, je suis le roi Dagobert.
Dagobert.
Dagobert, premier roi des Francs. Il est là, devant toi, là.
Où as-tu trouvé la couronne de ton roi?
Je l'ai trouvé par terre, sous le buisson, mon roi.
Ah, mais je suis tout aise, je m'en souviendrai. Mais maintenant, il faut me la rendre. Allez, donne.
Non.
Bûcheron, je suis le roi, enfin. Bon, regarde, voilà. Tiens, regarde, voilà. Regarde. Vois-tu, regarde, voilà. Regarde, c'est moi. C'est moi, c'est mon profil. Ah. Voilà.
Mon roi, t'as mis ta couronne à l'envers.
Marseille and the surrounding region were among the major ports for bringing in goods and precious metals. The Byzantine solidi were brought via Marseille, so were the gold coins struck in the western Mediterranean. All these gold coins were recast and struck again in Marseille. That's why we have here one of the largest mints of the Merovingian period.
Coins struck locally bore the names of Byzantine emperors. The reverse side is directly inspired by Oriental coins. The weight is given, 7 siliquas, and the mint, MA for Marseille, AR for Arles.
At the time of Dagobert, there were 2 main mints in France, Paris and above all Marseille. Both the Paris and Marseille mints were subject to the royal administration, which is why we find the name of Éloi, Eligius, both in Marseille and in Paris.
On the death of Dagobert, his hoard was inventoried and divided among his heirs. This tradition weakened the kingdom. Conversely, church property was not divided up. As the years went by, the church hoarded an impressive number of objects and coins, and its power increased. Only the church could finance large building projects. That's why all that remain of that period today are traces of religious life, like the church of Saint-Victor in Marseille, or the famous crypt of Jouarre near Paris. Their role was to protect the mortal remains of saints and men of the church and organize pilgrimages. Those men of the church who preserved the tradition of writing advised the kings.
The important functions of kings, like striking money, which characterized the Roman period, disappeared and were often taken over by the church. The king's role diminished, while churches, abbeys and monasteries struck coins. So in monetary matters, the role of the state was transferred to the church. There was a connection in this period between the bishops and the striking of coins. For some, it was a question of maintaining their commercial value. But when we make the connection with the role of the church, it seems much more that these coins had a votive value. They were struck for making offertories, and so in a way were intended to increase the wealth of the churches. At the end of the period, during the 7th century, when the number of bishops was declining and when hard times began to affect the church itself, coins gradually ceased to be struck at all.
At the end of the Merovingian period, the kingdom was in serious difficulties. The territory under royal influence was considerably reduced. There were frequent epidemics and cities were abandoned. So it's hardly surprising that there were no more coins. The first signs of a revival came at the end of the 7th century. The mayors of the palace asserted their authority and adopted a silver coinage. A coin struck in Lyon explicitly bears the name of this new coinage, the denarius. Many of the mints opened again. This phase of Merovingian monetary reconstruction ended under Charles Martel, whose son Pépin the Short became king. In the 7th century, while Europe was in disarray, Islamic armies invaded Arabia, Persia, and North Africa, and crossed to Gibraltar. In the 8th century, the Muslim world reached its peak.
At the very beginning of Islam, at the time of the Prophet, the Arabs were familiar with coins and used them for trading with regions under Byzantine administration, but among themselves, the Arab tribes used barter rather than money. At the time of the conquest, the caliphs had to establish a complete system for administering this huge collection of territories they had under their control. Caliph Abd al-Malik entirely reformed his administration and introduced a system of money.
système monétaire.
The Arab monetary system is divided into two large geographical areas. The main one is around the Mediterranean, where gold coins were used, dinars, while to the east of Iraq the money was based on silver coins, dirhams.
The first coins struck by the Arabs were inspired directly by Byzantine monetary types. Imperial figures are found on their fields, the emperor, his son, or the empress, who were on the Byzantine coins. Later, coins became entirely epigraphic. There was no image on the fields, but extracts from the Quran instead. The economy and trade benefited from the unification of the monetary system. One single weight, one monetary type. The coins were the same from Spain to Iran.
The Mediterranean Arab countries and the Byzantine Empire had a system based on gold and silver. The European peoples only struck silver. The monetary hordes emphasized that there was no commerce between the two sides of the Mediterranean. International trade was conducted through Russia. The northern peoples sold metals, amber and slaves, which the Arabs paid for mainly with silver coins. In France, the Arab horsemen were stopped by Charles Martel at Poitiers in 732. The prestige of this victory enabled him to overthrow the last Merovingian king, and his son Pepin the Short took the throne. To establish a stable money supply, Pepin the Short made all the mints strike a new coin with the king's name on one side and the name of the mint on the back. This was the Carolingian denier. At the head of his army, Charlemagne pushed back the frontiers of the kingdom. The struggle against the pagans justified the expansion of his empire. No state had ever been as vast since Roman times. France and part of Spain, Italy and Germany were now subject to Carolingian authority. Charlemagne was crowned emperor by the Pope. He then used the structures of the church to consolidate his authority. The bishops acted as his intermediaries in each region, and once again, the church received generous donations. The church of Aix-la-Chapelle is symbolic of this period. It is one of the very rare monuments built by Charlemagne that has survived. Peace encouraged urban development. Charlemagne put huge stocks of silver money back into circulation. Trade flourished, and coins were once again an integral part of daily life. The first coins under Charlemagne were of the same type as under Pepin the Short. From 793, he introduced on coins the signature which is found on the parchments. Sometimes the signature has his name Carolus Rex around it, and sometimes the name of the mint, here Lugdunum. These changes of type can be explained by the fear of forgery. Each time all the old coins were withdrawn and a new monetary type was struck. Sometimes the weight was reduced to make a handsome profit. Although divisions crept in later, Charlemagne's monetary unity survived his empire. On the reverse side of the coins of his son Louis the Pious, the name of the mint is inscribed in 1, 2, or 3 lines. Even if the monetary type evolved, the denier remained stable. Charlemagne's realm took a battering from seagoing peoples. At the end of his reign, the Vikings attacked the empire. Pillaging and hostage-taking were a daily scourge.
Les Vikings!
To fend off the Vikings, fortifications had to be built, arms purchased, ransoms paid. Charles the Bald issued a new denier bearing on one side his monogram and on the other the name of the mint. Several hundred of them have come down to us. Western Europe continued to use this Carolingian monetary system solely based on the little silver denier until the 13th century. The number of Carolingian coins struck was in direct relation to the Viking threat. The supply increased throughout the 9th century and then diminished after peace was restored. In the early Carolingian period, hoards were few and far between. During the 9th century, with the Viking invasions, they became numerous throughout the empire. As the Vikings were pushed back in the 10th century, fewer coins were struck. Hoards then became rarer and were concentrated in the north, where fighting was still going on. Having had to join forces behind the king to fight off the Vikings, the vassals who'd been responsible for defending portions of territory took back their independence. During the 10th century, they built castles from which they ruled over their lands. Behind their ramparts, they appropriated the right to strike money, first clandestinely and later with the king's approval. In France, at the beginning of the 13th century, there were about 100 mints, each of which produced large quantities of coins. The feudal lords fought amongst themselves, pillaged one another's wealth, and turned it into coins. It was a period of clearance which strengthened the economic circuit.
For the king, for a count, for a bishop, striking money was a source of revenue because there was a considerable difference between the cost of making the coins, that is, buying the metal and the manufacturing cost, and the value of the coin. That difference was their profit, and it represented an important part of the revenues of a kingdom or a feudal lord.
As the feudal mints increased in importance, the number of coins struck in the king's name diminished. Around 800, coins struck by the royal mint accounted for the entire money supply, but by the year 1000 it was only about a third. By that time the king was just one lord among many. Hardly any feudal monetary dies are known to us, except the fine 13th century series from the Arras Mint, attributed to Count Robert of Artois. They're kept at the Musée de la Monnaie in Paris.
These are tools that were used to strike small deniers in the Artois region. Some are virtually in mint condition. This one has not been deformed at all, while others were clearly in use much longer. The top part has been all but crushed by hammer blows.
La surface supérieure a éclaté sous le choc du marteau.
This was an attempt at making money using one of the tools from the Arras collection. Each part of the motif is done with a precise stamp, which is repeated as often as necessary to achieve the complete motif. There must have been a group of workers and technicians who specialized in engraving and striking coins, which was a very highly skilled job.
A large amount of money was needed, so the mints had to produce huge quantities. They employed a workforce with a variety of skills: metal casting, preparing blanks, die engraving, or striking coins. The feudal lords entrusted responsibility for the mint to managers who put their skills to good use, striking coins and also buying the metal at the best price. These managers hired out their services and paid themselves from the profit made by the mint. mint created its own monetary type, usually inspired by dominant local types. For example, we know the denier parisis from Paris, the tête blaiseau-chartraine in the style of Blois and Chartres, the full-face tête de face, and the crook. Each one is representative of one part of the kingdom. These major types were independent of the secular or ecclesiastical status of the lord of the land. At Cahors, the bishop was the feudal lord. He had all the feudal rights, including the right to strike coins. We still have the fortifications from that time where people and goods coming in were checked.
New coins regularly turned up at the city tolls. They were coins issued by mints in the region and sometimes even foreign mints. All these coins had different fineness and weight, so money changing was necessary. Money changers operated near the gates or inside the city, and their job was to facilitate the flow of money.
Let's take an example. We know that coins from Cahors had exactly the same physical characteristics as those from Rodez. There was no need to change them, but you would get 4 Cahors coins for 1 from Toulouse.
And that changed for each feudal mint. Each mint had its customs and characteristics.
Alongside the expert coin strikers and money changers, a new social stratum specializing in money appeared, the bankers. We can see from their account books how they lent money to private individuals and played a role in international trade.
The bankers in Cahors were well known in the medieval world because they handled many transfers of huge sums of money between the various economic centers in Western Europe.
At Arles, the church and cloister of Saint-Trophime are among the jewels of Romanesque art.
In the heart of the Middle Ages, Europe was full of churches, monasteries and cloisters like this one. The church extended way beyond geographical borders and local languages, and had a strong presence at the courts of the main princes, which enabled it to devise a new economic dogma. The church authorized lending, but forbade lending with interest, which is why it was carried on by non-Christians, particularly Jews. On the other hand, the church also condemned swindling, what it referred to as doing great harm. In other words, when an exchange was not fair. All these examples were summarized in the 13th century by St. Thomas Aquinas in his comprehensive survey of theology, which remained the basis of the church's economic doctrine.
From the 12th century, the king managed to extend his realm. He began by political agreements, including alliances, but he also did it by making war. This expansion of the royal territory was at first confined to the north, with the powerful feudal lords sharing control of the south. Each time the king imposed his coins and closed down or restricted the production of the feudal mints. Not only did the royal coffers receive more taxes, but the royal mints, which were striking more and more coins, made mounting profits.
Le consul de Béziers. Le consul. Alors, ces hérétiques.
Les 222 présumés hérétiques, de par les listes que vous nous avez fait tenir.
Vous les livrez?
Jamais.
Vous n'avez pas à décider, c'est le Seigneur qui décide.
Ici, c'est le Conseil qui décide des affaires de la cité. Et le Conseil a d'abord décidé que personne n'aura de nous un denier vaillant pour que nous changions de seigneurie.
Si vous refusez de nous livrer les hérétiques de Béziers, c'est que vous êtes tous des hérétiques.
Vous vous trompez, messire abbé.
Les catholiques de Béziers nieront-ils la présence d'hérétiques dans leur ville?
Il n'y a ici que des citoyens.
Des citoyens?
the 13th century, the king launched a crusade against the feudal lords in the south of France on a pretext of stamping out heresy.
When the king started crusading against the people of Albi, it was clearly an opportunity for him to attach more territories to the throne sooner or later, but also to increase his area of monetary production and the zone in which his own coins were in circulation. He imposed his coins in taxes and levies, and new royal mints gradually replaced the feudal mints.
After the fall of Carcassonne, the feudal mint closed. A royal mint then opened there. Small coins were used more widely in this part of France than in the north. The Roman presence left its mark in the way of running the town administration and in trade relations, so striking money in this part of the country was highly profitable for the state coffers and finances. On the heights of Carcassonne, the little village of Cessac. This is where one of the first royal hoards was found. It contained about 2,000 13th century deniers.
This hoard dates back to the second half of the reign of Louis IX. With each new conquest, he imposed a new monetary type, the royal type. This royal type consists on one side of the cross and the king's name written explicitly as Ludovicus Rex, and on the other side the Châtel Tournois, a stylized figure of a chateau in Tours, characteristic of the coins of Tours. The king imposed this type in all the mints under his control. In the Cessac hoard, we only have one monetary type, but there are differences characterized by secret points or punctuation which can be used to identify several groups. These groups can correspond either to periods or mints, but as our research stands at the moment, we're not in a position to attribute this monetary production to the mints which might have issued them or which issued coins with the Châtel Tournois.
The fortified port of Aigues-Mortes was a symbol of royal power on the shores of the Mediterranean.
In the mid-13th century, roughly in the middle of Louis IX's reign, the Kingdom of France was pacified. There was no more internal strife. Louis IX had succeeded in imposing his new silver coins on all the mints in the kingdom, and he then set out on a campaign of conquest and developing relations with the East, organizing crusades with a view to enlarging his kingdom.
The Crusades were a clash of two cultures and two economic and monetary zones. In Western Europe, silver coins were struck, but on the other side of the Mediterranean, the Arab monetary system was founded on a gold coin, the dinar.
Louis IX was familiar with the Arab world because he had already taken part in a crusade, so he knew he would need gold coins. So to prepare his crusade, he asked the Paris Mint to strike new gold coins, the gold écu, for trading on the other side of the Mediterranean. Striking these new gold coins after a lapse of several centuries was an important new departure in French coinage. It was the start of the use of gold coins again, which lasted several centuries, practically until modern times. A new economic zone and a new monetary zone were opening up at the end of the Middle Ages.